people who haven't necessarily been in touch with NTI before, but have heard about us through this event or through Dr. Tan himself. Welcome. You're so deeply welcome here. So we're delighted to have you as a friend, and we hope that we can continue the friendship. So I am the head of our program Health and Social Wellbeing at the Nantian Institute, which is based in Wollongong, New South Wales. And I'm hosting this Zoom meeting on Dharawal country. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the countries where you are all today and the First Nations people present in this Zoom meeting. I'd like to pay my respect to all elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their cultures and connections to the land and waters across Australia. So Dr. Tan and I thought it might be a good idea to sit in meditation just for a minute or two to ground ourselves, because the start of an event is very exciting, particularly for the presenters, but also for those who are joining us as well. There's a lot of flurry and you might have been busy trying to get here and make the time today. So I would invite you all to take a seat. You're probably sitting on a chair or a cushion, and the invitation is to ground yourself in the present moment. So if you would like to close your eyes, you're very welcome to do so. Just allow yourself to sense into the body. And noticing what's happening on the inside. And you might also notice the way your body rests on a chair or cushion, with your weight grounding down. And you might want to soften the body, so you can roll your shoulders up, back and down, or gently move your head from side to side, softening any tension, any holding in the body that you might be bringing into the meeting today. And you can allow yourself a few cleansing deep breaths. Just a signal to the body that you're here in the present moment, and that you have this wonderful opportunity to listen and reflect upon the Buddha Dharma and its applications in the modern world. So bringing your heart and mind and body together as much as possible. I quite like this term by Tara Brach, which is to listen with the ears of the heart. So bringing that spirit to the session today, listening with the ears of the heart. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Welcome back. So today I'm in conversation with a friend, someone I've known for about 7 years, Dr. Tan. And Dr. Tan is a clinician whose work and career has really been grounded in this integration of Buddhism and psychotherapy. He's been practicing an integrated Buddhist psychotherapy for decades. He is one of the founders of the Australian Association of Buddhist Counsellors and Psychotherapists, AABCAP, and he's still very much active and involved in that community. He's a psychiatrist and a meditator, and he's also a teacher and an educator. And Dr. Tan and I first met when I joined the Nantian Institute. He had created and taught a subject in our health program which I have mentioned and I'll speak more to in a moment, called Healing Traditions, Buddhism and Psychotherapy. And it was a very popular subject for us students. Students saw this as one of the most cutting edge and interesting subjects in our program. And that's because it gave them the opportunity to bring together what seemed to be different paradigms or ways of thinking about psychological distress and suffering. And Dr. Tan approached it from a clinical perspective and an academic perspective. So students were able to bring this content alive in a very real way in the class. And so when I arrived at Nantian Institute, we had a series of conversations and talked about how we might collaborate together using our different vantage points. I'm not a clinician personally. I come from more of a philosophical background. And so we decided that we wanted to record some conversations, which we did over the course of a year. And we also did some writing about how you might approach this intersection. And so Dr. Tan brought with him decades of clinical experience and application, and I was offering more of a theoretical approach. And I think something was born out of that conversation, if I might say so myself, Dr. Tan. At the very least, a friendship, but I think something more was born, and that was an intellectual discussion about how this might be applied, some of its limitations and risks, but also its amazing possibilities and potential for healing in contemporary times. And so during those conversations, we wrestled with various questions relating to this topic. We talked about suffering, how it's understood and constructed, how it's understood by the Buddhists, how it's understood by the psychotherapists. We talked about the mechanism of healing, and we talked about whether healing can be talked in universal terms or whether it's entirely specific and unique to the individual. We talked about the age-old question of whether one needs a healthy, functional self in the world and their relationship to others, and whether this was crucial to progress on the spiritual path. We talked about when it might be appropriate to suggest meditation to clients and those who are in acute distress, and how we might consider these types of very practical real-life situations. And then we moved into more existential territory around death and dying, and whether there's a place for that in psychotherapy, and whether psychotherapy can benefit from the Buddhist approach, Buddhist practices relating to such human moments. And one of the most kind of interesting questions, I think, that has stuck with me, Dr. Tan, relates to this notion of ordinary unhappiness that was put forward by Sigmund Freud. And one of the questions that I often ask myself personally is, are we striving for something more than ordinary unhappiness in our lives? And can therapy deliver that? Or is a spiritual path more suited? And so this is something that we explored through these conversations. And I think that this today is really an extension of an ongoing conversation that we've been having for years. And of course, we're not going to be able to cover all of those topics. You'll have to enroll in one of our courses to do that. But what we will do is introduce you to some of the ways we understand and wrestle with some of these fundamental inquiries and queries when we talk about bringing together two very interesting and rich traditions. So I would like to just tell you a little bit more about Nantian and the Health and Social Wellbeing Program. And I'd also like Dr. Tan to tell you more about AABCAP and its training program in a moment, in case you are looking for greater opportunities and in case this is relevant to your work in the world. So at the Nantian Institute, well, firstly, I should say who we are. The Nantian Institute is a Buddhist-inspired, Buddhist-informed higher education institute that's accredited by the Australian government. And we offer a range of postgraduate courses in Buddhist studies, humanistic Buddhism, mental health, mindfulness, and health and social wellbeing. And health and social wellbeing in particular is a program that looks at the interface of science and spirituality. So Buddhism and psychotherapy, as you can see, is just a natural extension of that exploration. And we're very interested in this very cutting edge space of wellbeing science. We're interested in bringing together integrative models, complementary models. We're interested in the wisdom traditions like Buddhism and putting those in conversation with evidence-based application. And so students who take health and social wellbeing explore areas like art therapy, mindfulness and compassion in leadership and in healthcare, subjects on nutrition, mental health, physical health. And they have the opportunity to dive deep into a research field that they're interested in, looking at a therapeutic modality, for example, or some of these interesting intersections that we're talking about. And so I personally came from a public university. I came from the University of Adelaide. And what struck me when I got to Nantian is, one, how rigorous it is, and how cutting edge it is, but also how contemplative it is. And it really invites students into this space of reflection and contemplation in relation to themselves, their practice, and they might not be Buddhists, but they might be engaged in other types of wellbeing or spiritual practices. And then that understanding in relation to the self is the springboard for engagement with evidence and science. So it's a very inspiring place to be. And when I got here, I thought, oh, I wish I could be a student, not a teacher, because there are so many books and wonderful resources here that I would love to really, really delve deep into. But it's a real privilege to be a teacher here. And so if you're looking for more information, I'd really invite you to go onto our website and have a look. And now I'd like to hand over to Dr. Tan to give us a sense of why he started AABCAP and the importance of AABCAP and this ongoing offering that AABCAP are providing to psychotherapists and those who are clinical in this space.
Thank you, Nadine. That's a great start for this conversation we're having all together. I'd like to begin by saying hello and welcome to so many familiar faces and to also some new friends. I love the way you help us with the meditation this morning. I needed it as much as anyone else to mindfully, calmly bring myself to this meeting and to gather myself together, thanks to your meditation. Thank you for inviting me to this conversation, Nadine. With regards to your first question, how did AABCAP come about and what AABCAP might be about for those who might be interested? It really was perhaps the biggest move on my part to integrate, which is the topic today, to integrate my Buddhist teachings and practices and influences with my work in the clinical area as a therapist. It also happened at a time when mindfulness was spreading through the world, not just the therapy world, but the world in general. And this was in large part due to the work of Jean Kabat-Zinn. Jean Kabat-Zinn, as many of you will know, from Massachusetts General Hospital, as a scientist there, decided to scientifically approach the meditative process through mindfulness to see how it might help the patients. And he had the courage to advertise for the patients in Massachusetts General Hospital, for those who are not satisfied or have some questions about their treatment in the hospital and whether they like to explore meditation as an assistance. So he started off with a bunch of very unhappy patients And through his very carefully structured research, which I will not go into, that was the beginnings of mindfulness spreading in a secular way, reaching the man on the street in terms of the reduction of pain, the reduction of symptoms, and then, of course, that very quickly spread to the whole range of suffering as we have as Homo sapiens. Yeah. So I was just chatting with a group of my Buddhist inclined psychotherapists and counselors. And one day I just happened to say, I think it's time we started in Australia to group together, to study together, and to integrate further our Buddhist teachings and practices, and to actually then find it useful to share with our clients, our patients. And initially, it has to be in a secular way, unless the client or the patient starts with us knowing ourselves as a Buddhist therapist but in those days, most of us were hiding in the closet. We did not announce ourselves as Buddhists. So I thought it was also a time to declare that we are from the Buddhist orientation, whether you see Buddhism as a religion, or whether you see Buddhism as a philosophy, or as a psychology, or as a spirituality, that we come from that Buddhist tradition. And in the process of forming, our main aim of forming the group was also to start a training program. And we invited counselors and therapists who have satisfied certain criteria in their training, in their work, to join us to integrate Buddhism and psychotherapy and counseling together. And I'm glad to report that we are just on the eve of launching our 7th training course with 21 students. And it's way back in 2008 when we started, we had no idea how it would grow and how it would even survive, because we were introducing something quite, in a sense, quite daring. Yeah. I hope that's sufficient, Nadine, as an introduction
thank
to
you.
this topic.
Definitely, it gives us some context.
Mm.
Thank you. And we can provide individuals with AABCAP's website and some of the resources on their site as well when we send out a follow-up email after this event. So thank you. So let's officially begin having a conversation, Dr. Tan, about the topic today, which is healing. I love that it's just one word. That really works for me. And the first question really is a bit of a professional one, but also a personal one about your own journey. So obviously at some point your Buddhist insights began to shape your clinical practice. And so we're really interested in hearing how that happened. Yeah, let's start there.
That's a very in-depth question. Thank you. In a way, you're asking me how did I come to integrate Buddhism and psychotherapy, isn't it, in the context of this meeting today? And because you're speaking to someone who's analytically oriented, I can't help but say I can respond looking from my unconscious as well as my conscious level, because I think unconsciously the integration started in my very young days. I had a very devout Buddhist mother who was, in a sense, a bodhisattva in her own ways, and I was already taking in from her ways of helping herself and her ways of helping her colleagues and her friends through her Buddhist temple and her Buddhist teachers. Then I was very fortunate. The sequence of events led me to become a novice monk in the second year of my medical school training. And one memory that comes back is a very loving memory. I used to sit beside the late Chief High Priest of Malaysia, Venerable Dhammananda, as he would receive in every evening members of his congregation, his disciples, his followers, who come to him with their problems or dissatisfactions in life and wanting the Venerable to counsel them, to assist them, to support them from the spiritual sense as well. So I was sitting there taking in already, I think, an integrated counseling sessions, if you like, and certainly Buddhist practices and teachings from the Theravadan tradition that Venerable Dhammananda came upon. Later, after graduating as a doctor, it coincided with the time that the World Fellowship of Buddhist Youth was formed, and I was asked to take the lead for Malaysia. So in bringing together all the Buddhist youth groups of Malaysia to then be represented at the World Fellowship of Buddhist Youth International Conferences, I met many counselors, therapists, doctors who were very devout Buddhists. And in our formal and informal chats, I became more and more aware of how these beautiful human beings have integrated therapy as such with Buddhist practices and teachings. Yeah. So then also, when I migrated to Australia in 1976, it also coincided with the time that in the analytic training we had in Sydney, there were already psychotherapists and psychoanalysts who were into spirituality. And there were, as many of you would know, there was a flurry of books in this area. I was then exposed to Mark Epstein through YouTubes as well. Certainly Jack Confield, Tara Brach, and so on. These were therapists, counselors, mainly psychologists, who were offering assistances to their clients through Buddhist teachings and practices. And when I joined my first 10 days of Vipassana meditation training, I was transformed by that experience. And my helping my patients took a different turn. I must also take this opportunity to thank those patients I had, and more so in recent years, when I was becoming more and more known as a Buddhist therapist, who actually shared with me what was useful and what they got from their exposure to Buddhism, and what more they wanted from me, which encouraged me to continue my spiritual journey and to bring those parts of it that are useful not only to myself, but to all fellow sufferers into the consultation room. So these are all the ways I have consciously and unconsciously integrated to do. And by the way, integration is a lifelong process. And to integrate is to grow. So I'm continuing to integrate. And this is an opportunity today, right now, with all of you to continue my integration. So thank you, Nadine, for being here and for being with all of us, as I'm sure each of us continue to integrate as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. That really gives us a sense of where you're coming from and also how it's unfolded for you and your clients
Mm.
over the years. So thank you. Yeah, the next question is really the million-dollar question, and I'm probably asking it way too early in the piece. And it's probably why many people are here today, I would suspect. And it's something perhaps that we haven't resolved as a society. And I know that, a lot of people are looking these days for more instant gratification. And there are a lot of distractions around that people can use to avoid this question. But the question is, what heals? So something beyond immediate symptom relief, something deeper. We're talking about psychological healing here. So I'd love you just to speak to that question. What comes up for you?
Mm. I think the word healing is huge, isn't it? And the word healing, I think, comes more from the spiritual world, whereas therapy, in a sense, comes more from the medical model or the psychology model from counseling. So I'm glad you used this word healing. What heals? That challenges all of us very deeply. And I suppose I could try to attempt to answer this huge question, which I'm still exploring myself. What's healing? And if I may jump straight in, just even before spiritual healing, if we just use the word healing in its general sense, I think it occurs in the in-between two individuals in the relationship, in the quality of the relationship. And in spiritual healing, it occurs between the disciple, the student of the Buddhist or the spiritual teacher, the priest, and so on. And therefore, it has to come from the intrinsic qualities of that therapist, that teacher, with the intrinsic yearning, the intrinsic request, the right intentions, the right views of the sufferer, of the student, of the seeker who has brought it into the two-person situation. So I think I will just leave it at that as a broad introduction to the topic, whilst there are so many specific factors each of us on the screen I can say that from your integration, what did you feel healed?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for keeping it broad, because I think there are so many ways to address this question. And you're right, there's a very kind of specific question in relation to one's own conditioned mind and psyche. And that's something that unfolds in relationship, as you say. And then, of course, there are techniques as well that are in the mix that many people speak of, like mindfulness and self-awareness, which we'll get to in a moment. So, yeah, thank you for that response. Okay, so the next question really is about, we're talking about these two ways of seeing the world, and each of them has its own logic and assumptions and approach and modalities. And they were born of different contexts, historical and social contexts. And some aspects of these paradigms are similar, and some of them are very different. And every now and then there's tension there if they're particularly different. It's good, I think, for a clinician or a scholar to be very aware that we're not talking about the same thing. We're talking about integrating differences or reconciling differences. So can you speak to the question of what's different about Buddhism and therapy, and why does this matter?
Yes. We're jumping in at the deep end now.
Sorry, that's me.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I think I'm ready. I think the audience is ready.
We've prepared for 7 years, Dr. Tan.
We've all been hopefully listening mindfully, and I've been listening to myself mindfully. Can you phrase that question again, Nadine?
Sure. What are the differences between the traditions, and why does that matter?
Right. Very good, very good. Yeah. In the psychotherapy tradition, it's still coming from the model of pain, the model from the medical model, where there is a client or there's a patient who has symptoms, and they want the pain removed. They want the suffering. They want the physical or mental pain to be removed. Yeah, and that's the request, and that's the beginning of the journey. Yeah. Whereas healing from the spiritual or the Buddhist tradition is very different. It's much more ambitious. It's much broader. And if I go direct to the Buddha, the Buddha's teachings is not about removing symptoms. Although on the spiritual journey, a lot of pain, a lot of symptoms can subside or can be removed. The aim in Buddhism as such is towards liberation. And in the Four Noble Truths, the whole message is what's the path to be totally liberated from all suffering? To the extent, if you follow Buddhism very deeply, to the extent that we do not even return to samsara, we do not come back to this world, because we know if and when we're reborn, I better not say when we are reborn, we're back to suffering. So the aims of Buddhist spirituality, Buddhist healing, is very broad and very deep. But it along with Buddhist teachings and practices as they are being shared from the monastics today to all of us, there is also now Buddhist counseling and Buddhist therapy or integrated therapy and Buddhism. Yeah. So that addresses trying to put the two together and delivering what the person is looking for and to what extent the person wants. So it's not surprising that most of my patients, if not all, especially in the later part of my career, I've just retired a couple of months ago from being a clinical Buddhist-oriented psychotherapist. The patients who might begin with symptoms, the clients whom I see that might begin with the obvious suffering that brought them to me, whether it's a suffering in the pain of their relationships with their significant others or whatever. They reach a point where the symptoms have subsided, or when the pain is much less. But something else evolves. There is still a general sense of dis-ease or unsatisfactoriness, as you were leading to even right at the start of today's session, Nadine, that, psychotherapists, or even starting from Sigmund Freud, only promise to help us mere mortals to, to, to come to our common human misery.
Shouldn't laugh, but
No, he's very honest and very straightforward in that. He's not psychoanalysis or the world of psychotherapy that he started. He wasn't promising liberation.
Mhm, mhm.
It was very limited aims of reducing or removing symptoms. Yeah, whereas an integrated spiritual counseling or spiritual therapy offers the individual who requests. We can only offer for those who request. Yeah. And sometimes it comes in the therapy room when the client or the patient goes deeper and expresses existential anxieties.
Yes.
Yeah. When very often it comes in the form of aging, sickness, and death. And then there's a lot of room there to bring in the spiritual aspects.
Yeah, yeah, that's profound. Yeah. What I was thinking about as you were talking was also the role of meaning. And I know that many psychotherapeutic traditions
Mm.
value meaning and having some kind of framework and way of living your life that feels ethical and
Yes,
meaningful. And I thought
yes,
Buddhism offers that to a lot of people as well, which might have therapeutic effects in a way.
yes, yeah.
Mm. Okay.
I have this poster in my clinic.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's a newborn hatched chicken
Mhm.
with the shell cracked open just beside it, and the logo says, "Now, what do I do now? It's been hatched. What do I do now?"
Mhm. Yes, makes me say something Freudian about finding your mother, but I'll withhold that thought.
I'm now
Okay.
coming from the therapy world, Nadine.
Oh dear. It's good to have a laugh in amongst this very, very kind of serious terrain of suffering.
Yeah, good.
So, really, I want to think about something a bit different now, Dr. Tan. I'm really speaking to those of us in the room who are meditators or work with meditators. There's, as you know, there are all sorts of ways to meditate and practice. And every now and then people run into trouble. So they might face some kind of psychological content or trauma or grief or loss, something that they haven't quite felt or experienced yet in the meditation process. And we know that sometimes this can be quite extreme and lead to adverse experiences and spiritual emergencies. And other times it's just something that meditators might feel they don't quite have the language or the tools around. And so you spoke about Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach, who often do, as a matter of course, recommend therapy. But I'd love to know your view. Should meditators seek out therapy, and when? Why?
I think meditators who want to be therapists as well, and I think meditators who want to be meditation teachers,
Mhm.
um, in addition to their continued meditation practice, their continued satipatthana journey. I think it's very important to also learn the counseling and the therapy skills. Yeah. I've attended many retreats and I've asked many difficult questions to many meditation retreat teachers, and I can sense, understandably, the limitations of some, and also understand some bringing up that they can't answer my question fully because they're only coming from one angle, and it doesn't include something else. Yeah. Similarly, you could be asking me, Nadine, do all therapists have to learn meditation? That's the flip side, isn't it? Um, and my answer is, again, preferably, especially if we want to attend to these deeper questions, uh, existential questions, how to attend to our ordinary suffering, how to attend to, nowadays it comes out in terms of books, the trauma of everyday life. How do we attend to it? That's I'm quoting Mark Epstein's book title now. So I think it's preferable, and it adds to our armamentarium of thinking, feeling, and techniques to help a fellow sufferer.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think when we spoke last time, you spoke a little bit about some of the mechanisms that are automatically inbuilt into a therapist's work life, like supervision and self-reflection, self-awareness. And yeah, I think that you were telling me that has a lot of parallels with mindfulness.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes I find it no different, but if I give it further thought, there are similarities and differences between the self-reflective functioning of the therapist or counselor.
Yes.
And this is in the development, in the training of a therapist or counselor. It has to do a lot with the counselor, the therapist's self-reflections. And in-depth training in this area includes being a patient, being a client. So a lot of therapy courses include a therapy experience as well. Yeah. And this is a controversial area because not all training programs agree to this. Yeah. But in that self-reflection, we are approximating the insight-oriented meditations that comes from the spiritual traditions. Yeah. And inevitably, we the mind looks at itself and seeks what reduces suffering.
Yeah, that's very interesting. The next kind of question I had for you relates, I suppose in a way, this is a very intuitive process, and it might be hard for you to respond to in a universal way, but say I come to you with a range of symptoms, and you're working with me on the symptoms, and you have the thought it might be beneficial for this person to start meditating. So the client might be ready to start meditating. And I suppose this question really points to what I mentioned earlier around some risks and contraindications, and the wisdom of the therapist as well, because we know that, like, there's a whole stream of mindfulness-based therapy, which people will start using straight away with a client, like quite quickly. And so I'd love to know your wisdom in particular as to when you might broaden the psychotherapeutic aims and include something like a mindfulness meditation practice and suggest that to your client. When might you do that?
That's such a good question, and that's such a lovely area to explore for all of us, whether we are the therapist or we're the client. Thank you, Nadine. In the first third of my practice as a clinician, I've been a clinician for 50 years. In the first third, um, it was again about symptom reduction. And I was teaching systematic desensitization. I was teaching um Jacobson's muscle relaxation technique.
Mm-hmm.
Those days we called them relaxation therapy. Yeah. In the middle third of my career, it went on to the use of hypnotherapy. It it went on to um, um, other forms of relaxation that arguably were deeper. And then in the middle part of my 50 years, about my 25th year onwards, it moved on to mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness initially just as a relaxation technique.
See.
And I think that's the way Jean Kabat-Zinn brought in MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And because he brought it in scientifically, it was so easily accepted. And I actually, when I attended his one of his first workshop at the Omega Institute in New York, he invited 300 therapists all over the world, and 600 of us turned up. And he was teaching mindfulness in a completely secular way. I pulled him aside. I said, John, what's the matter with you? Why can't you say you got all this from the Buddha? Why can't you say? He says, Eng-Kong, um, if I bring in the B word, if I bring in anything to do with religion, I won't have an audience. But thanks to him bringing it in a secular way, which is what I did in my practice earlier too. Then when mindfulness got kind of worldwide acceptance and it came into the general vernacular as well. And then, of course, the pros and cons of mindfulness, the McDonald form of mindfulness. But it then brought in that I don't need to teach relaxation techniques. I don't need systematic desensitization. I can straight away help my client, my patient, if he or she already not meditating regularly, to begin to meditate. And I finally reached the stage in the last third of my clinical career that I started every therapy session with a meditation
Mm-hmm.
to help both my client and myself, just like the way you did at the start of this meeting, to get into that mindful state so that we benefit maximally the next 45 minutes or so. And then at the end of each therapy session, I would ask my patient, who by then is a regular meditator, we've gone through a lot today. Would you like to choose one of the meditations that you think will help both you and I to integrate this session together, that comes to your mind that would be most helpful? Now, of course, these are patients and clients who've already moved on from the relaxing, tranquil meditations to the insight meditation. And invariably, my patients will choose a loving kindness meditation or a compassion meditation. And when therapy has been coming towards the end, a joyful meditation. And of course, ultimately, a a meditation again and again on upekkha, on equanimity. So that is all included in the therapy session, the way I practice today.
It's
I hope
really
I've-
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's easy to think solely about mindfulness, but you talking about the Brahma Viharas or the four immeasurables.
Yes, in particular, yes.
It's really like I can see how it might soothe people in the moment and enhance that relationship.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up. It's probably something not a lot of us have thought about. So,
Yes.
yeah, thank you. Okay, so the last question points to what you said earlier, Dr. Tan. You said something about growth. I think you were saying when you put or integration, the process of integration leads to growth. And I've been thinking about the fact that when you put two different things together, you make something new. And so Buddhism and Buddhist psychotherapy isn't necessarily Buddhism, though it has Buddhist roots, and it's not necessarily traditional psychotherapy. It's a new offering to the world and a new way of seeing the world. And I think Mark Epstein really captures that. You mentioned him, and we'll put him on the reference list. He's someone who is pioneering that space of an integrated Buddhist psychology, or he's a psychiatrist, psychotherapy. So my question to you is, what is the process of integrating Buddhist psychotherapy, and what is this integrated model that we're talking about? What is this new offering?
Wow, that's another big one. To try to simplify, I think it is bringing the gist or the best of the therapy process from the therapy traditions, whichever therapy tradition you come from, and it's not necessarily dynamic analytic. You could come from the tradition of the cognitive behavior therapies to bring those skills and techniques and join them, integrate them apparently seamlessly. Many of us are doing that now with mindfulness, in that using mindfulness in the spiritual sense, which is the right mindfulness or the skillful mindfulness from the Eightfold Path. And once we bring that into the therapy, I think we're integrating Buddhism and psychotherapy. Because as all of us know, each of the Eightfold Path also embodies the other seven. So for therapy, for counseling, to bring in the spiritual, very skillfully, many people have found this. If you like, Western psychology has picked up the centerpiece of the Buddha's teachings in a practical sense, which is mindfulness. But remember, it is one of seven. And when we bring in that mindfulness, then it opens up to all the other skills and techniques, right intentions, right views, and so on and so on, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, and so on and so on. Yeah. So, and the whole world, I think, is bringing in through the lens of mindfulness, initially in a secular way, but now embodying more and more the spiritual path. That is also Christian counseling. That is also Christian ways of therapy. And there's also quite a lot of similarities with other spiritualities like Buddhist spirituality, and of course differences.
Beautiful, and thank you for that reminder. I really think, the emphasis on right mindfulness, and the fact that it implicitly relates to ethics and how we treat ourselves and others and the world, basically the ethical character of our lives is something that's often forgotten about when we speak about mindfulness in that John Kabat-Zinn sense. So I don't think that was his intention at all. It's just how it's unfolded in the popular discourse. So that's a lovely reminder. And I think in a way that's what makes this Buddhist, as opposed to another modality like mindfulness. So thank you. Dr. Tan has asked me to open the field for any questions because he'd like to have a dialogue with some people from the audience. And I've asked enough questions. So if you would like to ask a question, I'd ask you to raise your hand and hopefully I'll see you and I'll unmute you.
Perhaps not just questions. There might be individuals who just like to make a comment and love to hear your comments as well.
So I can see Belinda, whose work I've read before. Belinda, would you like to speak? I'll just pin you.
Yeah, I'll unmute. Thank you for that, Nadine and Eng-Kong. I really enjoyed, brings me back to my clinical practice and all the steps and exploration. I just want to make some observation and maybe extend the discussion if I may, right? And the points that you brought up, Nadine and Eng-Kong elaborated on it about adverse contraindication, about, what does the therapist use? Does a monk have to use counseling skill? Does a therapist have to learn meditation skills and all that? And I find that in my work, this been asked many times. And Chief Dhammananda, that's the chief's nephew, who is now the chief reverend in Kuala Lumpur, he gave a very good framework, which I put into the special issue. He says, actually, the Buddha teaches the 3 pillars: bhavana, sila, dana. Right? Bhavana relates to all the meditation and all that. He says, unfortunately, intentionally or unintentionally, the secular practice and also in therapy, we focus on bhavana, right concentration, right mindfulness, and all that. We've forgotten the other 2 pillars, which is very important: sila, ethics, and dana, generosity, right? And the reason I brought this up is because I think that one of the questions as therapists that we need to ask is, what is the ethics of bringing whatever tradition you want to bring? And I find that a lot of the adverse contraindication is because there's a lot of therapists who goes to one weekend workshop and then go and teach. Crazy. I got lots of psychologists that are trained. They come and says, I want to learn meditation, but they've never done meditation because it looks good on their CV. Okay, so it's not unexpected. It's also irresponsible for us as more experienced teachers to actually allow them to do that, because they would not know how to deal with adversity. They would not know how to deal with noble silence, and they wouldn't know when the person actually cannot do meditation. Like, I never let my clients who have schizophrenia, paranoia do vipassana. Right? And then the other thing is also, just very quickly, we have to differentiate between a mindful practitioner, a therapist, versus a therapist who use mindfulness as techniques and skill. They are very different. Eng-Kong has been talking a lot about the mindful therapist whose presence is in the space between him and the client, right? And I don't think we emphasize that a lot. I think we should lower the skill part, we lower the technique part. I know John, as a good friend, he's focused a lot on the circular because he needs to bring that in. I think we've gone that. We have to actually promote a mindful therapist as versus a therapist who use mindfulness. That's my contribution, observation.
Thank you, Belinda. I think you've made several good points there. And I think it also contributes to the conversation today. Thank you, Belinda.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got another friend, an old friend with his hand up, Jonathan Page. I think you can unmute yourself, and I'll just pin you. Ask to unmute and pin. Hello, friend.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hello, Nadine, and hello, Eng-Kong. Lovely to see you both. I guess I'm a medical practitioner, and Buddhism has influenced my practice of oncology and palliative care. I've got a simple question for Eng-Kong. Really, there are three words that have been used a great deal, and the longer I practice, the less I know about them. The first is therapy. Like, what does it actually mean? The second is integration. I don't know what that means. And the third is personal growth. So they're words that we often use, but like a lot of concepts, the more we think about it, the less clear we are what they actually mean, apart from being very important. So can you simply respond to that, Dr. Tan?
Hi, Jonathan. So good to see you in yet another Zoom meeting, Jonathan. And I can always rely on you for very good questions. Can you say those three words again?
Well, the therapy,
Yes.
integration,
Yes.
and personal growth.
Yes. Because I know Jonathan, I'm going to answer Jonathan keeping in mind what I know of him. And he's no doubt asking me this question because he's keeping in mind the Eng-Kong that he knows. So this is going at that dimension, if I may, Jonathan. Jonathan, the value of your questions is not in the answer. The value is in the questions themselves. The very fact that you're asking, what is therapy? The very fact that you're asking, what is integration? The very fact you're asking, what is personal growth? That's the value of your question. And these are the questions that each of us have to keep asking ourselves. So that's one straightforward answer for you. Yeah? A response, not an answer, but a response. But if we, I think therapy we've talked a lot about. I think personal growth we've hinted. If I just attend a bit more to the word integration, which is the subject of the conversation today as well. If we take to the root meaning of the word integration, as Nadine has pointed out, we are often integrating A and B together. Yeah, integration is a juxtaposition of two fields of thinking, feeling, whatever. Yeah, and it helps the individual to grow because simply, as Nadine has said at the start of our meeting today, the effect of putting two together is more than the sum of the two. A very popular saying. And that's where integration occurs. So in your talking to me now and in my relating with you now, what comes out of it is more than what you and I have put in, Jonathan. That's integration, live, right now, this moment, on this screen with all of us. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tan.
Thank you. Okay, we have Dylan. Hello, Dylan. I'll just try and pin you. Here we are. And I think you're unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both Nadine and Eng-Kong for a wonderful conversation and for inviting us to be part of it. a lot resonated with me. So just I suppose by way of comment first, I think I've long had a concern about this practice that Eng-Kong alluded to of extracting mindfulness more or less in isolation from the Buddhist tradition into Western psychotherapy. So I found Eng-Kong's comment today, that reminder actually that each of the factors of the path, including mindfulness, contains the others. I found that very helpful. And that idea, that suggestion that through opening mindfulness, we open up the other factors as well. So thank you very much, Eng-Kong, particularly for sharing that insight. And I wonder, I'd be grateful if you might perhaps share with us some examples of how that progression has occurred in the therapy room. How through mindfulness some of those other aspects of the past have opened up.
Thank you. Is that Zoe?
No, this is Dylan. I don't know if you can see Dylan.
Oh, where's Dylan on the screen?
Camera, but it might be hidden in the
Are you on the screen? Can I see you?
Yeah, I'll hide myself for a moment.
Oh, there you are. Good. Okay. Right. You must be on the second page that I haven't clicked on to. Hello, Dylan.
Hello.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And that reopens the whole conversation. Could you summarize your question? Could you say that question again in brief to me?
So I think it was part a comment and part a question. The question part, I suppose, was I wonder if you might expand on that idea of how through opening mindfulness, particularly in the therapy space, we open up the other aspects of the path as well. And in particular, I'd be interested to hear if you have any examples from your own practice where you've seen that progression occur.
Oh, good. Yeah, that helps me to focus, to respond to your very specific question, really. Yeah. There are moments in therapy, and being a therapist, we work with one underlying principle. The patient has lots of questions. Rule number one, don't answer the question straight away. In fact, don't answer the question at all. Is to ask, or even quietly ask ourselves, why is Dylan asking this question? Why is the patient asking this question? And when we explore that, the patient himself or herself often comes to some answer. And all we can do is to embellish, to perhaps add a bit here and there to fill up the inquiry. Does that answer your question, Dylan?
Now that gives me an idea.
Yeah. Because your question is very specific. Yeah. I was listening to a talk by Venerable Sanatara Vihari just recently, organized by AABCAP. Venerable Sanatara Vihari is a Buddhist monk from Mexico. He's touring the world. He's giving a lot of talks. He's from the Theravadan tradition as well. And AABCAP purposely invited him to talk about from the Buddhist world, if you like, from Buddhist spirituality, what could be useful for counseling therapy. And we also knew that he's a Buddhist counselor. Yeah, and he gives several hours a day free of charge in what he calls Buddhist coaching to his disciples, his followers, who just want to have a chat with him. And of course, the chat is about their problems and their suffering and so on. Yeah. And his way of attending to it was remarkable. He does not he simply emphasized in the talk that is actually the presence of the teacher, the presence of the therapist. And of course, we can extend that to the healing presence, if you like. Yeah, it's not in the answers to the seeming questions. Yeah, because nobody knows the full answer to any question. But it is to attend to put it another way from a psychoanalyst, Donald Winnicott, is to tune in to what is the heart's yearnings from the inquirer, and to accompany the inquirer from his or her heart's yearnings that drives that question. Can we leave it at that, Dylan?
That's a very interesting perspective. Thank you, Eng-Kong, and thank you, Nadine, as well. Thank you.
We have Venerable Metta. Hello, thank you. I'll ask you to unmute and I'll pin you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Eng-Kong and Nadine, for putting this together. Buddhism in Australia and psychotherapy even are still relatively new, in the present era. There are many flavors of Buddhism in Australia, some who may be doing good things, both monastic or secular, but some who possibly aren't. Are we at a point where there should be an ethical standards framework across Australia, that we have more clarity about how people should behave in certain settings? And of late, I wonder, because some traditions haven't done the right thing, that we probably need a victim and support program or survivors program in Australia. So can I have reflections from both of you?
If I might jump in first, Nadine. There are similar problems amongst therapists. I want to broaden your very good inquiry. Yeah, in terms of the Sangha, it is only recently that the Australian Sangha Association has been formed, and I would encourage you to take this very important area to the Australian Sangha Association, and from the association look into ways and means of addressing this big issue. Within the psychotherapy world, each psychotherapy association has its rules and regulations and has its ethical questions raised and studied and worked through, just as importantly. And one way of putting the two together, if you like, the two associations together, I now have to quote from Neville Symington. Neville Symington is a psychoanalyst, and he just passed away. But he came to Australia, 30, 40 years ago. We're very fortunate to have him, because he's also a spiritualist. He's also, through his book, Emotion and Spirit, he presented the psychoanalytic aspects of each of the major religions of the world. And when you go to his chapter on Buddhism, you find how he integrates therapy with the spiritualities. And his sentence from that chapter, he says, ultimately, both therapy and spiritualities is aimed towards being the good, doing the good. As simple as that. While some traditions may take the good to the God, and we look to the God for the good. Some traditions look to the God within ourselves, the Buddha nature, the goodness within ourselves. So ultimately, your question, which is very good, Venerable, and very well intentioned, we have to take it to the various groups and how these groups practice to return to the good, which is an aspect of us that we are all born with. From the spiritual tradition, from Buddhism, it's the Buddha nature that we are born with. From other traditions, it's Christian tradition perhaps is to turn to our godliness. Yeah. I hope that suffices. I hope that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I would just add it's very simple, and it's more a social perspective that society as a whole is becoming increasingly aware of power dynamics. And even in seemingly benevolent spaces, particularly spaces that are cloistered or private, the potential for misuse of power is great. And so the question here really is, there's something beyond the psychotherapeutic code of ethics that might be at play that relates specifically to how the Buddhist teachings are being applied or misused or misconstructed, that needs particular attention. And an organisation like AABCAP would be ideal to have conversations with around that. But yeah, I think any light we can shine on, protecting individuals who are vulnerable, who potentially go in with a very open heart and mind, and are in the hands of an expert, I think that's a very fine thing, Venerable. So thank you for raising.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have Michael. So Michael, if you'd like to unmute.
Hello, both of you. My comment, my response is not a question. It's just a comment on something that Eng-Kong mentioned that really excited me and jumped out at me. Dylan asked the question about when a client questions the therapist or the leader or the master, and Eng-Kong, your response was, don't be in a hurry to answer the question. In fact, don't answer the questions at all. And I really loved that, because for me that is the heart of allowing rather than jumping in. And it in fact touches on this point that you just raised about Nadine, about power dynamics. There's often that kind of question in any interaction, and if you can just draw back and not answer, you can pull back on part of the power dynamic. But that's a side issue. But the big issue is what Eng-Kong said about not answering it at all. And then later, when you were talking to the previous person, you spoke about to tune into the heart of the question. And all of that came together for me in something that was spoken about before, listening with the ears of the heart. And that all came together for me, and just it jumped out at me. I loved it, and that's my comment for today.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. That crystallizes for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have Mei Yun Guo. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Hi, you two, host and Professor Tan. Well, I'm from China, and I've been a meditation practitioner for a long time, and I've touched several types of meditation, but there's always be wondering in my mind that no matter what I practice, I couldn't get into that status of deep concentration state. Well, in Chinese we call 入定. Well, it's hard for me to go into that kind of status, but I just wonder if the status of deep concentration, or maybe sometimes it is called Mahayana or what, I'm not for sure the correct name. Is the status has quite great function than the normal meditation status to our brain and our mindfulness. Well, that's my question. Thank you.
I'm afraid I have to ask you to crystallize your question again. It seems to me you first share with us very open-heartedly that you think or you feel you haven't gone into the deeper concentrations yet. And then you gave a question. So if I don't respond to your remarks first about yourself, if I just ask you to restate your question, what is your question?
Oh, okay. Well, I practice a lot and with several different kinds of meditation. They are rooted from various traditions, such as Vipassana or Vajrayana or Mahayana. But each time, each type I practice, I couldn't get into those kind of status. Well, they call them deep concentration, or maybe Mahayana. Sorry, should be, what's the name of it? I forgot the name of those deep status. In Chinese, we call it 入定. I don't know if you can get this meaning of this word. So I try my best to those deep concentration status. But I failed. So I just wonder if this kind of status has some special function than the normal meditation status.
Okay, there are about 3 questions there you're asking. In view of the shortness of time as well, I also have a sense that you've assumed, because I'm Chinese looking and I have a Chinese name, that I would understand your question thoroughly. I think I've got the gist of your question. My general response is, and I'm responding now with very little knowledge and experience of Chinese Buddhism, with very little, hardly any experience of the Mahayana Chinese way of meditating. It's a whole new field to me, what you're talking about.
Oh.
But responding to you, generally speaking, many of us in our meditation journey will feel at some stage that we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
As if that stage is a very specific stage, that we're not there yet. Now, it's good in the sense that we are not there yet, but that self-reflection that gives us the energy to work on it a bit more or whatever. But also remember, it's all different levels, and we're all the time deepening. So we're all the time not there yet, because we're not fully enlightened yet. So it is a relative thing, but it informs us that, yeah, maybe we need to deepen, maybe to take this question to your meditation teacher, to ask your particular meditation teacher, where you think you are at a level, where you think you're not at a level, and ask the meditation teacher how to reach that level, if you may. Yeah. I'm sorry, I can't. If we had time, I would invite the Chinese-looking monastics on the screen, who I think will be more familiar with your type of sort of meditation to respond to you. But we don't have the time. But you'll have to chase up your resources in your place.
Well,
Thank
thank you so much. And what I wanted to say was that we'll be sending out a follow-up email and some opportunities for further connection and conversation. So we'll do that in case you are wanting to answer a question or you'd like more information from Dr. Tan or myself about any of this. So I wanted to firstly just thank all of you. We understand life is busy, and the fact that you've been here for an hour and a half on this journey with us has meant a lot. And I really sense your presence and the sense of Sangha and community in this space. So thanking each of you. I'd like to deeply thank my colleague and friend, Dr. Tan, for his time, his insights, his wisdom, and the clinical stories you told as well. And I'd lastly like to just mention that if you are interested in Nantian Institute and what we are offering here, we have got an opportunity to come and listen to some speakers at our virtual or online open day, which is happening this afternoon. So I've got those details here for you, which I'll pop on the screen in case you're interested. And otherwise, we'd love to keep in touch. So please reach out where possible. And I'm sure Eng-Kong will see many of you in other Zoom meetings. So Eng-Kong, would you like to say anything briefly while people sign off?
Well, I just want to make a note that to thank Professor for appearing on screen, who's the head of the Nantian Institute just now. And I also like to mention very quickly to the Reverend who raised that important question of ethics within the Sangha members, that in fact it was in Nantian Institute that the Australian Sangha Association was born many years ago in one of the auditoriums. And one of the reasons for starting that Australian Sangha Association was in fact to deal with ethical problems arising from Sangha members. So I thought I'll just add that in and again say my thanks to yourself, Nadine, representing the Nantian Institute, and again to register my gratitude to the whole of Nantian Institute, including its leaders, for organizing this event and also affecting my life, my integrations in a very meaningful way, including in this session. Thank you, Nadine, and thank you everyone who's
Wishing everyone well. Thank you.